Last week I talked about spiritual leadership in the new era, where I said that spiritual leadership is not about religious leadership, but about spirit. This is important for us to think about, as individuals, people who are on the path of light and love and wisdom, to think about our spirit. It is a spirit of a person that eventually finds him or herself in a position of leadership. That's true leadership. Leadership is not the result of the money that mom and dad and the family have. It is not about being the president of a country necessarily, or necessarily the head of this or that, because leaders can be found in the shadows. Interestingly enough, I was reading the other day in some of the Agni yoga books, determining, a definition of Agni, what an Agni yogi is. And it was a surprising statement in one sense, saying that an Agni yogi is one who does not draw attention to themselves. They don't want to be seen. And I thought, but what about Helena Rourke, the founder of the Agni Yoga Society? And then I remembered the picture, this well-known photograph of her where she is standing under an umbrella and standing behind a line of very famous people, world famous people, and here she is behind them. Not only behind them, but hiding under an umbrella. Okay, I understand that. And then the more I read about an Agni yogi and their leadership capacity and the protective armor that the master gives them, then I began to understand further why an Agni yogi does not want attention drawn to themselves. Sometimes it's necessary, but and important to be recognized, but at other times they can get more done when they're under the umbrella. Now, to define leadership, the more spirit a person expresses in their life, the more awakened that person is. What does that mean? It means the more light, the more love, the more will that is vibrant and in expression in your life means the more awakened that you are. The light, the love, the will within you, the more that is in expression, then the more awakened you are. And the more awakened you are, the greater your leadership. The more awakened the leader, the more burdens and duties and responsibilities they have. So, if you don't remember anything else but this first opening, this introductory statement, about what spiritual leadership is, then you'll really have the core of the understanding. The greater the expression of light and love and will that is manifesting in all that you do, all that you say, all that you are, the greater you have in your own expression of leadership. And juxtaposed along with that comes burdens and duties and responsibilities. So you cannot be a leader and reclusive at the same time. See, by hiding behind a line of great people under an umbrella does not make you a recluse. See, these are things for you to think about yourself, but it also helps us as human beings to recognize who true leaders are and not be distracted by how loud they speak about themselves or brag about themselves or how, big of an estate they live in. That's not leadership. So today we're going to take a look at what the duties of an awakened leader are. We should be aware of these duties because we are traveling the path of light. So if we consider ourselves as spiritual people, leaders that are increasingly awakening and releasing the light and love and will from within us, then we are also going to need to know that we have certain duties and responsibilities that accompanies that. This is also a way that we can recognize if the spirit of leadership is awakening within us and what percentage, has awakened. It also means the more awakened we are, the greater service we can be to the hierarchy. Okay, so the first duty of a spiritual leader is to expand the consciousness of people and to show them greater values. Okay, if we back up just a minute where I said the more awakened the leader, the more burdens and duties and responsibilities they have. Now we're understanding what this first duty is and what it means to have a burden, what it means to have responsibilities, what it means to have duties. So the first duty is to try to expand the consciousness of people and show them greater values. Look at the great ones that we know, the visible ones that we know, that have tried desperately to expand the consciousness of humanity. What happens to them? This is why Helena Rourke symbolized in that photograph, standing behind these great leaders, almost unseen under the umbrella, so that her work would not be attacked, although it still is. Many, many years after her passing, it is still being attacked. The same as those who are following in her footsteps are being attacked. Why? Because we're releasing more light and love and will from within the nature of an individual, a family, a nation, a culture. And what is the immediate effect? It's a reaction, and that reaction is, I don't want to be different. I don't want to hear anything different. I want to be who I am and what I believe in, and I want to be able to swim in my opinions for the rest of my life. Some people keep their consciousness at the same level today as it was when they were 15 or 16 or 17 years old. But now they are 30 or 40 or 50 or so old, so that their level of consciousness, that level of consciousness where they were in their teenage years, is no longer right for them. Even though they continue to bring those games and habits and playthings into the now, into the present. So the spiritual leader is going to expand their consciousness, whether it is your spouse, whether it is your family, whether it is your group, whether it is a whole nation that leader is going to expand their consciousness and say, this game was a good game to play at that age. See, but now, what? Now it's obsolete. That is expansion of consciousness. So what are some of those games? Those playthings that we played with when we were teenagers? See, it really doesn't make any difference what they were, because we know now that they are outdated, and we may be suffering the consequences from those years, even now. Basically, we could say everything that gave us pleasure back then must be left behind. So now that we can dedicate our energy, our time, our money for greater things. Isn't that logical? Doesn't that make sense? But it doesn't always happen that way. Most of those games, those playthings, those toys that we used for the physical body, emotional body, mental body, were games that no longer help ourselves or others. For example, those emotional toys that we played with in our early years created lots of messes. And some of those messes we are still either dealing with or simply repeating. These messes created from our mental games that many still continue to play or are dealing with the effects of, such as what? Exploitation and manipulation, are still in your lives, and they no longer help you or help others. These old habits and old behaviors and old so-called playthings can now be replaced. And there is something to replace them with. This is what we have to understand, is that, let's say that you were a beauty queen when you were in college, in your sorority, in your fraternity, and they voted you the most beautiful and so on and so forth. And here you are now, 40 years later, and you still are immersed in what you were, what others saw you as when you were in college. How is that helping you today? It's not. It's keeping your level of consciousness back where it was when you were a kid. So how is that supporting you now? What if you instead took your accomplishments when you were a young person and let them become the foundation or the springboard of what you can become now and what you can become in the future? How are you going to synthesize all of your accomplishments in such a way now that it releases greater light and love and will from within you, so that now you're going out into the world, whether in a very visible way or whether in a very invisible way, and you are now going to change the consciousness of humanity. Being a beauty queen when you were in college is not going to change the consciousness of humanity today. I guarantee you it is not. So, these attributes or these experiences when we were a kid, now they're going to be replaced with the treasures and potentials of our expanding consciousness. Expansion of consciousness can be used to help others see their problems. Those same problems, but from different points of view. For example, expansion of consciousness can go parallel to the power you exercise to master your vanity and ego and separatism. So the more we control and conquer this darkness, our vanity, our ego, and so forth, the more expansion of consciousness we're going to have. Now we can help other people do the same. Am I making sense? Is this registering? Okay. If a person was occupied for 50 years with one thing, eventually they must be able to raise their interest in such a way that they start to think about the universe, the stars, space, about humanity, about the problems of humanity. That is expansion of consciousness. The second duty is to encourage people to work by inspiring them to engage in the right duties and right responsibilities. When, as an awakened leader, you give a job to someone, you're going to teach the person that something very, very important. When you put them through an orientation period, you're going to teach them that the job is not carried on for the sake of the work, not for the money, not for the position, but for their expanding consciousness and for their future. You're going to tell them that this job that they have been given, I'm repeating myself here so we can really understand it. We're teaching them that this job, this position is not for the sake of the work, not for money, not for position, but for their expanding consciousness in the future. We are going to tell that person that by solving the problems of the job the best way that they can, they're going to be actualizing their higher faculties. Now, if you're the leader doing this, sharing and teaching and helping that person's own leadership awaken, they may not listen to you. They may react. What's going to be reacting? What's not going to be listening? It's their ego. It's their vanity. Interesting. But if they recognize and listen and understand that they're going to be actualizing their higher faculties, they're going to begin to understand that the purpose of their work is a means to reach spiritual maturity. But if their work, listen to this, if their work is swallowing them, eating them, making them a slave of their work, they are losing the whole meaning of work. If your boss, if whoever you answer to, comes to you and says, here's a job, and you think, oh my God, I already have so much to do. Do you not understand? Don't give me one more thing. You're either in the wrong job or you're in the wrong attitude. Because we want our consciousness to expand. We don't want to lose the meaning of work or the meaning of labor. Work is like an exercise that we do to increase our muscles. In fact, I just love the teachings of Agni Yoga so much because you talk about having various awakening experiences. Every time you pick up a verse and read a new verse, or see a new aspect of an old verse, it helps to awaken you. For example, in one of the verses it talks to us about, don't stay with the same task for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 hours at a time. Why? First of all, you get bored. Secondly, you lose your psychic energy. And third, you lose your concentration. I mean, these have been my experiences. So you shift the task a little bit. this is, I don't know, I can't really explain it that well, but it's like a shift in consciousness. You're still traveling on Main Street, so to speak, and you know that you have 3 or 4 hours left of this to do over here, but now maybe it's like multitasking. So it's like when I prepare a talk for Sundays, it's very intense, very intense. Why? Because I'm working with Agni, energy, fire. And if I am not having a good day, then that fire tires me out really quickly. So I'll put it aside and I'll listen to some really good music. Or I'll pull out a verse from a book in the teaching, and it inspires me. And it reminds me why I'm doing what I'm doing. And now I'm energized again and I can go back. It is also, you're not going to find an Agni yogi that can only do one thing. As life will have it, they will have a particular talent in one area that they are extraordinary in. They'll have a talent that is needed for various reasons, from local to global. But they're also going to have other talents. So that's another way to shift from one talent to the next, to the next, to the next, that will bring you back to your initial task. So you don't want to be Johnny One Note. If you're Johnny One Note, you're not an Agni yogi. Smile. I know I'm throwing out a lot there for you to think about, but this is the deal. Work is an exercise that we do to bring out the potentials that are sleeping within us. And someday I am going to give a whole lecture on potential. What does it mean to have potential? It's mind-blowing to me when I finally figured it out. So work is an exercise that we do to bring out the potentials that are sleeping within us. Work is created to make our mind work synthesizingly. I'm not really sure if that's a word or not, but it sounds really cool. Synthesizingly, inclusively, in light, in clear communication and relationship with everything that is involved in the job. So what is our work doing for us? Our work, our labor is given to us to bring out the manifestation of the potentials latent within us. See, and if you say, I don't want to learn anything new, then you're taking that potential and you're putting it back in the drawer, that potential being a treasure that's just waiting to be awakened. You say, I don't need that treasure in my life. Now, this is true in every kind of business and in every kind of position you hold. It applies if you are a secretary or an executive. No matter what your position is, your duty is your game. A game that was given to you to increase your flexibility, your beauty, your health, your happiness. But remember, the game is not for the game. When you deal with your work in this way, you're going to start experiencing greater efficiency. Work and labor shows us where our needs are and what must be developed so that we will be a better worker. The third duty is responsibility. Give people responsibility and watch how they handle it. Some people use the responsibility to inflate their ego and vanity, to cheat people or to take care of their own personal desires or forget everything else. Responsibility is given to people to expand their consciousness and to think. What are they going to think? What is the best way I can use my responsibility to bring more prosperity, better health, better joy, better wisdom to people? Imagine if our national and international leaders and statesmen were practicing some of these duties, where they saw that their job, their responsibility is to bring more prosperity to their people, better health to their people, joy, joy, joy. That's kind of a missing ingredient on CNN. Joy and wisdom. And look at those leaders that are trying their best to bring more responsibility and better health and joy and wisdom to the people in their country. They're under attack. The fourth duty is to bring peace among humanity. We must not think and talk and write for separatism and conflict and war and destruction. That is not true leadership, not in today's era. That time is past. We must remove ourselves from warring and dividing conspiracy theories. We absolutely must. Do not get pulled into the stream of conspiracy theories or you're going to be lost. Now is the time to create peace, because in peace, you're going to find the greatest beauty that is hidden within you, and it's going to come into manifestation. Work for peace in the way that you want, with the groups that you want, with the wisdom that you have. Bring peace, but start within yourself. And this is not an easy job. A person who has no peace within their heart, they cannot teach peace to others. Peace is not achieved with marijuana, with drugs, with alcohol, and other artificial means. It is not. When you watch a little bit of TV, or a lot of TV, what's the first thing you see? And why are they? So that they can calm down, so they can have peace at the end of their day. That's not leadership. They're not expanding the consciousness of their watchers. Peace is not achieved with marijuana, drugs, alcohol, and other artificial means. Peace is the ability to solve our problems and conquer the enemies that are still within us. We must demonstrate peace if we want to bring peace to the world. A sage said, "The spirit of peace is a great entity in our solar system." How can we meet that entity? What is that entity going to say to you? How is he going to give freedom, or I'm sorry, how is he going to give wisdom to us if we do not have peace? That's what a great sage said. So we need to try from now on to establish peace and avoid any kind of problems that disturb our peace, because it is our duty to create peace and be an example of peace. Sometimes our example is more powerful than our words. The fifth duty is to spread the idea, the concepts, the thoughts of one world, one humanity. How are we going to do this? We're going to do this through our writings, through literature, radio, TV, social media, and any creative way that we can find to spread the idea. And when you do this, you're going to find how many enemies you have. because we know a law which says the more you increase your usefulness in humanity, the more attacks you're going to have. But eventually you will learn how to make these attacks energize you in such a way that you become more useful. This is what Agni Yoga calls tactica adversa. If we do not have opposition, enemies, gophers, snakes around us, it means that our leadership is ineffective. Eventually, in fighting the opposition, you show your gentle humility, your honesty, your beauty, and in demonstrating these qualities, in exemplifying these qualities, you eventually put them to shame. So we're going to learn the science of how to put these opposers, these enemies and traitors into one bag and use them to energize our work. Now here's an interesting story, a funny story. Sort of funny. It's more revealing than funny. God said to a king, "King, you know," this is God talking to the king now, okay? "King, you know when you finish all your jobs that you are now doing, you're going to die." The king said, "All right, sir." He then started the job and created additional jobs until God came and said, "Have you finished yet?" And the king answered, "No, I just started." And God said, "You sneaky person, you are wiser than I am." So there is a true meaning behind that story. Master Moria in the book Super Mundane says that when the hierarchy needs you, they give you additional psychic energy for you to live longer. So try not to finish your job if you want to live longer. The sixth duty is that we must try to put people in contact with their own soul, or the source of wisdom within themselves. Spiritual leadership must always try to make people free, but not before the right time. For example, you cannot give freedom to your three-year-old child if you are putting guns and knives in his environment, which is happening today. The child will harm and even destroy himself and those around and about him. Spiritual wisdom is to know when to give freedom to those who are ready, those who are spiritually mature, those who are growing up. Never, never try to create sheep and followers around you. You'll be sorry if you do this. Look what's happening in our political system in the US today. The worst traitors, slanderers, enemies are those whom you try to make your followers. Let them learn their lessons and lead themselves by slowly giving them freedom. The safer they are, the more freedom you can give. You are protecting them from themselves, from premature engagement with their what? Their potentials, their inner treasures. But always have that in mind. See, that could be a whole lecture in itself. What does that mean? The seventh duty is to find a smart way to spread the idea that hierarchy exists and that eventually people are going to come in contact with the hierarchy. So how do you do this? You can say it in this way. You could say, you know, there are masterpiece mathematicians in the universe that inspire us. Collectively, they are one body. this is another, like if you study Agni Yoga, you're going to see such examples given to you. What does it mean for an individual to be a collective? One body. It's so esoteric and so magnificent and so beautiful that it will just blow your mind. We don't have to use the word hierarchy. In every leadership effort, give the idea that leadership is in the hands of those souls who know what is going on in the world. And if people are ready, whisper to them, that is the hierarchy. Those are masters. Master Moria says they have a device in the hierarchy which registers every time a person talks about hierarchy. We are watched by the hierarchy. By day and night they behold us. MM says if you do not have this feeling, then you are an orphan. Feeling that hierarchy exists is a great help for us, because when we think about hierarchy, the energy of the hierarchy immediately comes to us. So this is a great duty for a spiritual leader. And I'm going to stop here. I think we've heard enough duties to think about. And the whole idea about, how, what's awakening in us, how much spirit is awakened within us. And they don't stop there, because we have more love, more light, more will to be released from within of who we are and what we're going to become, and how we can become that instrument to hierarchy.